Hi, I'm Sergeant speaking with Earthwalker Primitivist. Today I want to go over you something that's very important, and that's the considerations for fire building. A couple points that I want to point out that are very important when it comes to building a fire. A fire is a very important tool to a survivor or anybody out in the woods, anybody trying to survive in the elements and on the land. Even above water and above food, fire is more important to that. Without a fire, you can't purify your water to be able to drink. Without the fire, you can't cook your food properly enough to be able to eat it. You also can't stay warm and dry. Fire can be more important than shelter. If it's raining out, you could be warm and wet and still survive, as opposed to being dry and freezing cold. So fire is definitely a #1 priority. Okay, my first consideration for building a fire is, what is your need for the fire? It's one thing I stress in my survival and bushcraft classes is build what you need, not what you want. What do you need this fire for? As you can see here, I just heated up my canteen cup with some hot water to make my cup of tea. Anybody knows me knows I don't do anything until I have my cup of tea. So that's all I needed. I don't need a big bonfire. I don't need a build no huge TP fire. All I needed was a small little contained working fire to heat up that canteen of water. So there's no need for me to go crazy and build a huge fire and waste all those resources and energy and time to do that. Now, obviously, if I was trying to heat a camp over a period of night, a different type of fire, a larger fire, would be more important. Building a bonfire for signaling definitely would have been a different fire. If it's windy out and I'm trying to cook, there's different types of fires. You build a proper fire and build it properly. And we'll have a video later. I know I have a couple other lessons out there on my website about building different types of fires and the different types of fires and their different uses. So that's an important thing, is building what you need, not what you want, and building the proper fire properly for the job you're doing. The second consideration is, what are your resources? Obviously, the first part of that is planning ahead. You need to build a fire, so get everything together ahead of time. That's one thing I stress in my one class. I do a little, after they all build their first fire and successfully get a fire lit, I had them go about, and the last time I had a class, this is the area they went in, I timed them. I gave them a little contest to see who could build the first sustained fire. And believe it or not, even though they correctly and successfully built a fire, when it came time to that little competition, they all seemed to have take a longer time building that fire than they did during the lesson, because most people didn't plan ahead. They didn't get their tinder ready. They didn't get their kindling ready on the side, ready to go. One consideration, or one thing, key point when you're building a fire and you're collecting your wood, go out and collect all the wood that you think you're going to need to get you through the night, then multiply it by 10. A lot of times you think you have enough wood, but you'd be surprised how quickly a pile of wood can go through, especially in the climate you're in, whatever. Just this pile of wood over here, if I were to burn that, it would probably burn within a half hour to an hour time. Just how dry it is here right now and the type of climate and conditions I'm in. So plan ahead. The other thing you want to do is conserve your resources. It's another bullet for this second consideration, is conserving your resources. See how much you got. Luckily, very fortunately, in this area, my area is full of felled trees, deadfall, plenty of resources, so I know I can sustain a fire of any size for a great period of time, but that might not be your case. So conserve your resources. That plays into deciding what kind of fire you need, and to build a proper fire for what you need, and knowing that, okay, I might need a fire later on, so I need to conserve these resources. Only using that fire to perform that job you need to do, and then putting it out so you can conserve your resources. It's better to go a few hours without a fire than to go an hour with a fire and burn every bit of your resources up and then never have a fire again. Third consideration is choosing a proper location. 3 things you need to do with this. Let's look up, look down, and look around. First thing you want to do is look up. Obviously, up above me, got pretty clear skies up there. I got these 2 trees right here next to my camp, but I never built a fire that's big enough to touch these. It's pretty open, and they're not going to catch fire. 2 things you want to look for when you're looking up. One, like I just mentioned, is trees above it, any limb, especially if it's a pine tree, a dead tree, anything that could possibly catch an ember from your fire, or even the fire reaching up and touching with its flames and catching that on fire. You definitely do not want to catch a tree on fire, especially if it's a pine tree. I got pine trees in my area, but they're nowhere near my fire. They're all a good 10-15 meters away from my fire. So even if they were dead and dry, there'd be no chance of this fire, as long as I don't do something stupid and build a fire that I don't need. There's no chance that they'll catch on fire. The other thing you're going to look for when you look up is what's called widowmakers. Some trees that are prone to their limbs falling off, where you see there ain't too many in this area, but big, huge, large trees with lots of dead limbs in them, or even limbs hanging off of a tree. I don't have any limbs overhanging my camp, so I know I'm safe from any widowmakers, which are those limbs that can fall at any moment, whether it's a tree limb that's attached to a tree and just rotted and fell off, or if it's a tree limb that already fell, it's hanging on to another limb. A good gust of wind comes by, blows it, it falls. It's not going to scream at you when it's falling. It's not going to let you know. It's just going to fall, and it's going to hit you, and it's going to take you out. And if you're by yourself, that's just the end of the story right there. So you would definitely want to look up. And excuse me. The other thing you want to do is look down. Look down at the ground you're building it on. Is it going to roll towards your fire? You don't want to build your campfire up above a hill of your campsite if you're on a steep slope, or in any way where it could roll into your camp, into your sleeping bag or whatever you're sleeping in, or into somebody else, or even roll away and fall into something else and catch it on fire. Man-made, whether it's man-made or natural. You want a flat, level piece of ground to be able to set your campfire up safely. The other thing you want to do is look around. Look around you for any brush. As you can see, I got a lot of pine needles. I do everything I can to keep the pine needles out of my campfire. A lot of times if it's really bad, I'll even douse water around my campfire or just stir up the dirt to get the debris out of the way. But you want to look around. Is there any dry brush? Is there any bushes that are just dry or felled trees that possibly a spark can fly off of your fire and land on it? So look around and make sure that it's going to be safe. You don't want to wake up in the middle of the night while you're warm and toasty, but find out that you're warm and toasty because you just lit the whole entire area you're living in on fire. That would not be a good wake-up call. You'd be nice and warm, but you wouldn't be happy. The fourth consideration is containing your fire. As you see here, I got a fire ring. Now, I know my fire ring is a lot huger than what most people would make a fire ring, or what's considered a proper fire ring, but mine's big because I usually have a class out here. So I'll have up to 5-6 people standing around here working with tinder bundles and whatnot. So that's why mine's a little bit larger. But you want to find some kind of way to contain it. Whether it's even a bunch of old logs, like these large logs over here, they would work great at containing a fire just to make sure nothing rolls out. You're not going to set your fire up against it, but at least you have something there that if something does roll, a piece of wood does pop or split, it has something that catch those pieces from falling out. Even if it's man-made objects, a barrel, a bucket, something, piece of metal. If you are going to use stones, you definitely do not want to use river or what's called water rocks. The reason being is rocks are not solid, as most people would think. They are porous. They do have cracks, they do have holes, and they do soak up water, and water does saturate a rock. And what happens when you take a rock that's been in the water or saturated with water, put it in a fire or anywhere near heat, that water heats up very rapidly, turns to steam, expands, and it will shatter that rock. And so if you just go down to the creek and pick up rocks and just throw them in your fire or build a ring with that, you run a chance of those rocks shattering, and you could possibly cause injury to yourself or somebody else. The fifth consideration is, can you escape? What I mean by that is, a lot of people you'll see, and I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong, but they'll put fires right near their tent, right at the opening of their shelters. Like I said, I'm not going to say it's wrong, but you got to take that into consideration. Is if that fire were to go out of hand, could you easily escape? Is that fire going to possibly catch your shelter on fire if it's too close or if it gets out of hand? Especially if you fall asleep and you're not attending to it, could something go wrong? Also, you want to take into consideration if there's other elements that you have to run from, natural elements like an animal, a wild animal or something, or even another human being. Could you easily get up and vacate your campground, get out of your shelter, and vacate your campsite without running into your fire or causing injury? Does it give you an easy escape route from all directions? Can you be anywhere around your camp, around your fire, and easily escape? As you see, I have nothing impeding me anywhere around my camp. I can easily just take off any direction if I have a threat in any direction. The sixth and final point I have is put it out. When you are done, completely put this fire out. A lot of wildfires every year are started because campers leave a campfire unattended, or they just don't put it out. As you see in my fire here, it's almost burning out. A lot of people will just turn around and walk away from this, or kick it around. Those coals will burn for a while. Make sure you completely put that fire out when you are done with it, or when you leave. If you have to leave your camp for a while and you can't leave someone to attend to it back here, put it out, or devise you a way to carry some coals so that way you can restart it if you don't have any other fire starting means. Those embers, if you just leave them go, even just burying them, will burn and smolder for a while. Something comes by or a wind goes by and kicks those embers around, blows those embers around. That air and that oxygen from the wind just blowing it is enough to get that coal red again, and it'll land on something dry and start over. So bury it. Stir those coals around, bury it in the dirt. I always carry an extra water bottle out. In a survival situation, you might not have that luxury, but when I'm just out here, I always carry a couple extra bottles of water just to douse it out, pee on it, do whatever you can to get that fire completely out. If you could after you stir it around and bury it and mix it in with the dirt and water, if you could put your hands on it and hold your hand on it and not be burning your hand, then that's a general rule of thumb that you're good enough to lead that fire. But there's nothing wrong with being overly cautious and overly sure that fire is completely out. Just take that in consideration. One, just for safety for yourself, but also for the environment and nature and Mother Earth. You know, we don't need to be destroying her. Human beings do a good enough job destroying her as it is. So let's do our part and make sure that she's safe from what we do as individuals. So those are my considerations. So those are my 6 considerations. I'll just read them over quickly here. 1 is, what is your need for the fire? 2 is, what are your resources? 3, choose a proper location. 4, contain your fire. 5, can you escape? And 6, put it out. So I hope you learned something from this video. I hope you gained a little bit of information, a little bit of helpful knowledge. I hope you practice it and put it into use. There are definitely 6 things I consider every time I go to build a fire, just to make sure that I'm doing my part in being safe, not just for my safety, but also for the environment and for others. So, hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be back with more later. I'm Sergeant speaking with Earthwalker Primitives.